I'm Dawn, and I'm 40 years old. Looking back on a tough time in my life, it all started when I decided to end my marriage with Ben. I realized we weren't a good match because he acted like a child and annoyed me. The idea of staying with him forever felt like too much to bear. But it wasn't just Ben who made me unhappy. His mom, Carol, also made my life difficult. Right from the start, she made it clear she didn't think I was good enough for her son. Her constant criticism and mean comments made me feel bad about myself and like I didn't belong in my own marriage. I remember many times when Ben's immaturity and Carol's meddling caused problems for us. There were evenings after work when I hoped for a calm time at home, but Ben would be busy playing video games, ignoring me and our shared responsibilities. When I tried to talk to him about it, he just brushed me off, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing. Ben, I had a really long day at work. Could you please help out with the chores? Can it wait? I'm busy playing this game right now. But that wasn't even the worst part. There was a time when you forgot our anniversary. I can't believe you forgot our anniversary, Ben. It was a special day for us. Oh, come on, Dawn. It's just a date. We can celebrate it another time. Then he invited his mother over without even asking me first. Why did you invite your mother over without talking to me? I was hoping for a quiet weekend together. She's my mom, Dawn. She can visit whenever she wants. Don't be so stressed about it. And let me tell you about our money situation. It felt like I was married to a kid. Ben, can we talk about making some financial plans and saving for the future? You worry too much, Dawn. Let's just spend our money and deal with it later. These are just a few examples of how my marriage was falling apart. My concerns were ignored, my feelings didn't matter, and my needs were forgotten. It became clear that Ben's childishness and lack of caring were big problems in our relationship. Then there were the family get-togethers where Carol would always find a way to insult me in front of everyone. Her mean comments about my looks, job, and even my cooking really hurt. She seemed to enjoy making me uncomfortable, while Ben usually pretended not to notice, too scared to stand up to his mom. Let me give you a few real examples of how she, just like her son, put me down and made me feel small. Example 1. Carol, I spent a long time cooking this meal for everyone. I hope you like it. Well, let's see if it's even good. I'm not sure I trust your cooking. Example 2. Carol, I found this dress for the event. I think it would look nice on me. Oh honey, that dress is too revealing for someone your age. You want to look silly to you? Example 3. Carol, please don't criticize how I raise my kids. I know what's best for them. Well, clearly you don't, or you wouldn't make such silly decisions. What's wrong with you? Example 4. Carol, I've been working hard to stay healthy. I'd like your support. Oh please? All that exercise and dieting won't make a difference. You'll never look as good as me. Example 5. Carol, I asked you nicely before. Please stop saying mean things about me to other people. I'm just being honest, dear. People should know what you're really like. These conversations show how Carol always put me down and said hurtful things throughout my marriage. Her actions caused a lot of stress and made it hard to find any happiness with Ben. I reached a point where I knew I deserved better than this toxic situation. I made the tough choice to file for divorce, wanting to break free from the constant emotional pain I'd endured for too long. The courtroom became a place where I had to explain to the judge why I wanted to end the marriage, talking about how it had hurt me. When the legal process was over, I felt a bit lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But then something unexpected happened. My ex-mother-in-law, Carol, couldn't hide her happiness. She stood up in court looking thrilled, and said she'd finally gotten rid of me and won her son back. I've won. I finally won. Hearing her say that made me furious. How could she be happy about my pain and the end of my marriage? I couldn't hold back my anger. I told her exactly what I thought of her, calling her out for being a mean and spiteful person. But instead of being affected by what I said, Carol just laughed. Her laughter filled the courtroom, making the end of that painful chapter in my life even harder to bear. It was a scary reminder that some people feel like they win by hurting others, and her joy only made me more determined to move past the toxic situation I'd been in. Leaving the courtroom behind, I decided to take back control of my life and find the happiness I deserved. Carol's laughter reminded me of the battles I fought and the strength I found in myself. I wouldn't let others' judgments or cruelty define me anymore. I was determined to rise above the negativity and embrace the freedom waiting for me. With every step forward, I started a journey of healing and self-discovery. The path ahead wasn't easy, but I faced it with determination. I knew finding happiness wouldn't be easy, but I'd grown stronger from the struggles I'd faced. It was time to leave behind the drama and pain and look forward to a future full of hope and self-love. But unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. It seems like trouble just keeps finding me. Remember when Carol was gloating about winning? Well, she thought she'd get something out of it, but she never did, and she never will. You see, she believed she'd finally get her hands on a prized family heirloom she'd envied for years. What she didn't know was that I held the key to her dreams. It was a stunning diamond orchid necklace, passed down through generations in my family. Its beauty and rarity made it incredibly valuable, worth millions of dollars. Carol's eyes always lit up with greed whenever she saw it, but she could never have it. Throughout my marriage to Ben, Carol would often suggest selling the necklace for practical reasons, but I always refused, explaining its sentimental value and importance to my family. Even after the divorce, Carol still thought she deserved half of its worth. She believed she was entitled to it, thinking it would fulfill her materialistic desires. But what she didn't know was that I had a plan. It had been a month since the divorce, and I thought I'd left Carol and her schemes behind. Then, one evening, I was surprised when I heard a familiar knock on my door. Opening it, I saw Carol standing there, crying and shaking. "Dawn, please, can we talk?" Feeling curious and a bit sorry for her, I let her in to get away from the cold. I wondered why she was so upset and why she'd come to see me. We sat down in the living room, and I asked her to tell me what was wrong. Through her tears, Carol managed to speak, her voice trembling. "My plan, it's all gone wrong, Dawn," Carol said between sobs. "I thought I'd get what I wanted, but it's turned into a disaster." I felt skeptical but curious about what she was talking about. "What plan, Carol? And why are you so upset?" Carol took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. "You see, I thought Ben would get half of the value of the heirloom, and I would finally get what I wanted. But he told me something that changed everything." I leaned in, eager to hear what she had to say. "What did Ben tell you, Carol? Please tell me." Carol wiped away her tears, her voice sounding regretful and surprised. Ben told me he'd forgotten to mention a prenuptial agreement he signed before we got married. It said the heirloom and all your money were protected. I never had a chance." I couldn't help but laugh, feeling a mix of relief and triumph. "Oh, Carol, I've been waiting for this moment. I always knew your schemes would backfire." Carol's face turned red with embarrassment and anger. "You knew the whole time, and you let me think I had won? How could you do that?" Leaning back in my chair, feeling triumphant, I smiled at Carol. "Oh, Carol, I didn't make you believe anything. You just saw what you wanted to see because you were so focused on what you wanted. I knew the truth would come out eventually, and it did." As Carol faced the reality of her actions, her tears turned into frustration and regret. She had gambled and lost, leaving her with nothing but defeat. "I can't believe you had a prenup, Dawn. I was hoping to get some of your money after the divorce." "Carol, this isn't about being a good wife. It's about protecting myself and what's mine from people like you. I was smart enough to look out for my future. Don't be upset, Carol. You're the one who tried to trick and manipulate others for your own gain." Reluctantly, Carol pulled herself together, glaring at me with a mix of anger and resignation. "Heartless. You dare to call me heartless, Carol? Look at how you treated me during my marriage to Ben. You were mean, cruel, and always trying to control everything." As Carol stormed out, the room fell silent. The weight of her failed plans hit her hard. It was clear that her greed and deceit had led to her downfall, leaving her with nothing. I stayed strong, knowing I had to stand up for myself and what was mine. I had learned that trust and love shouldn't blind me to betrayal. As Carol reluctantly composed herself, she shot me a glare filled with anger and resignation. The bitterness of her own decisions hung heavy in the air as she muttered one word: "Heartless." I couldn't let that slide. "You call me heartless? Carol, look at how you treated me during my marriage to Ben. You were mean, cruel, and always trying to control everything." "I never treated you badly," Dawn firmly asserted. "You're exaggerating, Dawn." "Oh, really? Let me remind you of the time you purposefully excluded me from family events, constantly belittled my achievements, and spread rumors about me behind my back. You enjoyed seeing me suffer," Carol retorted, frustration evident in her voice. "I did no such thing. You're just trying to paint me as the villain. Stop denying it, Carol. I've had enough of your lies and manipulation. Get out of my house, please, Dawn demanded, her patience wearing thin. Dawn, please, just give me some money. I really need it, Carol pleaded desperately. I'll give you 30 seconds to get off my property, or I'll call the police. This is your last chance, Dawn warned seriously. You can't treat me like this, Dawn. We're family. Family should be kind to each other, Carol argued angrily. Goodbye, Carol, Dawn said firmly as Carol left, looking upset and defeated. As the seconds passed, Carol's face showed a mix of anger, shock, and feeling like she lost. She realized she couldn't control Dawn like she wanted to. Reluctantly, she walked towards the door. The tension between them filled the air. Carol gave one last look before leaving, stepping into an uncertain future and facing the consequences of her actions. I stood tall, feeling both relieved and free. I had cut off ties with something toxic and took back control of my life. The next day rolled in, and yet another person from my past tried to make amends. What do you want, Ben? I asked, my voice cold and unwelcoming. Dawn, I need your help. I'm in a tough spot right now. And I thought maybe. Ben's voice trailed off, sounding desperate. Forget it, Ben. I don't want to hear your excuses. You had the nerve to call me instead of facing me in person. How cowardly can you get? I interrupted, my patience running out. I thought this approach would be better, Dawn. Please just listen to me, Ben pleaded, his voice trembling. All right, Ben. Go ahead. Explain to me how you always put down my goals, laughed at my dreams, and made me feel inadequate. Do you recall those instances? I confronted him. I'm not sure what you mean, Dawn. We had our differences, but Ben started, but I interrupted him. Disagreements? Is that what you call it? I call it emotional abuse. You constantly underestimated me, trying to crush my spirit, but I'm done with it. I deserve better, I declared firmly. Please, I'm sorry for everything. I'm in a tough spot right now, and I thought maybe you could help me out. Ben's voice trailed off once more, his desperation evident. It's ironic, Ben. You agreed to the prenup, yet now you're here begging and pleading. I didn't fully understand what I was signing. I just knew I loved you. Stop pretending, Ben. You probably expected me to change my mind, I remarked sharply, my tone cutting through the air. Dawn, please just listen to me, Ben pleaded once more. I'm saying this for the last time. If you ever attempt to reach out to me again, I'll take legal action and get a restraining order against you. Clear? I warned him sternly. But Dawn. Ben tried to protest, but I cut him off. No, Ben, it's finished. Goodbye, I stated firmly, ending the call and removing his number from my contacts. I was finally free from both of them, and I felt relieved. As I sat and pondered on the journey I'd been through since my turbulent marriage ended, a feeling of contentment enveloped me. I was in a much better place now, both mentally and emotionally. It felt like a heavy burden had been lifted, allowing me to breathe freely once more. Life had taken an unexpected turn, and I found myself enjoying the simple pleasures it offered. I embraced my newfound freedom and delved back into the dating scene, meeting new people and relishing the excitement of forming romantic connections. Throughout this journey, I learned to value myself and refused to settle for anything less than the love and respect I deserved. Alongside the thrill of new relationships, I discovered strength and empowerment in sharing my story with others. The struggles I faced during my marriage inspired me to write a memoir, documenting the challenges I overcame. It became a symbol of my inner strength and offered hope to others who had faced similar hardships. Meanwhile, I couldn't ignore the bitterness of my ex-husband and mother-in-law. They seemed envious as they watched my success and happiness grow. They had underestimated my resilience, and now they faced the consequences of their actions. It was a satisfying reversal of fortune. Though I had moved away from their toxic influence, they still tried to damage my reputation, but I was determined to rise above their negativity and continue thriving. Despite Carol and Ben's futile attempts to tarnish my reputation, I refused to be silenced or underestimated. I remained steadfast in protecting my integrity and had taken legal action against them for their slanderous words. Their efforts to provoke me only fueled my determination to hold them accountable for their actions. As I faced this new chapter, I felt grateful for the inner strength I had found and the support of my friends and loved ones who stood by me. Surrounded by a network of uplifting individuals, I felt inspired to keep reaching for my goals. Their unwavering encouragement reminded me that I was capable of overcoming any obstacle. From the ruins of my failed marriage, I rose stronger and wiser than ever. I learned to value myself, set boundaries, and pursue my happiness without apology. The journey was tough, but it led me to self-empowerment and a life that was truly mine. My story wasn't just about pain and struggle, it was about resilience and triumph. I conquered the shadows of my past and stepped into a future full of promise. With each new chapter I wrote, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, embracing the joy that had been missing for too long. With every stroke of my pen, I reclaimed my voice, my strength, and my freedom. My goal wasn't to drive them down, but to rise above, showcasing the resilience and dignity within me. I was Dawn, the phoenix who emerged from the ashes, and I was prepared to soar higher than ever before, leaving my past behind me.
Living expenses. What does that entail? My mother-in-law's expression reflected genuine confusion. Hey, Brian, can you explain this properly? I pressed, watching my husband squirm. Brian, caught between his mother and me, seemed to shrink under the pressure. I've never received anything like that before, he finally admitted. Let me introduce myself. I'm Carol, a 37-year-old office worker, happily married to Brian. Our whirlwind romance led us to tie the knot within 4 months of meeting each other. Our families were thrilled, especially given our ages. Since our marriage, my relationship with my mother-in-law had blossomed. We often dined out and grew quite close. Initially, Brian and I lived separately but nearby. However, after Brian's father passed away, we decided to live together. Contrary to stereotypes, there was no tension with my mother-in-law. She willingly took on household chores, giving me time to focus on work. I felt guilty but appreciated her help. To show my gratitude, I provided her with some living expenses through Brian. Yet as Brian's appetite grew, I worried about whether our budget was sufficient. So, I broached the topic with him, suggesting we increase the allowance for his mother. I think we should increase the living expenses we give to your mom, I said, especially considering how much you've been eating lately and she's been doing all the cooking and cleaning. Brian seemed hesitant but eventually agreed, sharing my sentiment about showing appreciation tangibly. As I nodded in approval, little did I know that life was about to take an unexpected turn. Just a short while later, I found myself in a severe accident after colliding with a bike at an intersection. I found myself hospitalized for 2 weeks due to a fractured bone. On the first day, my husband brought me some essentials. Are you okay? It looks painful. I'll let my mom know, he said. That would be great, thanks, I replied. In my shared hospital room, I couldn't make calls, so I asked my husband to inform his mother that I'd contact her once I was able to move. Sure, I got it, he cheerfully responded before heading home. A week went by, and neither my husband nor my mother-in-law showed up. Despite my expectations, there was no contact from either of them. Concern gnawed at me, but I reassured myself, thinking it was just my husband being his usual forgetful self. Then, I tried calling. My husband didn't answer, which I chalked up to him being busy at work. Next, I rang my mother-in-law. Hi, mother-in-law. You must have heard from Brian, but I'll be in the hospital for another week, so I'll need some fresh clothes, I said. Hospitalized? What happened? An injury? Illness? Her flustered response made me uneasy. As I pondered, I realized she hadn't been informed. But why? If my husband forgot, she would have noticed my absence and called me immediately. Minutes later, she arrived, visibly exhausted. She explained Brian's absence, mentioning a sudden 2-week business trip. Thank you for coming, mother-in-law. What did you hear from Brian? I asked. He said he was going on a business trip for 2 weeks. It was sudden, she replied. That's when it hit me. Brian, an illustrator who preferred working from home, planned a sudden business trip. It didn't add up. Unless something significant arose, he wouldn't leave, even for local meetings. My mind raced with possibilities, including the unsettling thought that he might be cheating on me. I know for a fact that our company doesn't arrange meetings requiring business trips. How? Well, it's simple. I work there too, as an administrative staff member. Are you okay? You look pale. Are you feeling unwell? My mother-in-law asked, concern etched on her face. Our company wouldn't send Brian on a business trip. That's the job of the sales team. I'm an admin, so I don't go on business trips either, I explained, watching her reaction. Her puzzled expression spoke volumes. In other words, Brian lied. It had been a week since his unexplained absence and there was no official notification. I couldn't help but wonder where he really was. He left his injured wife in the hospital and lied to me. Did Brian tell you where he was going on business? I inquired. Come to think of it, he mentioned staying in a hotel in Miami arranged by the company, my mother-in-law replied, pulling up the hotel's website on her smartphone. As I glanced at the screen, my heart sank. It was the same hotel where we celebrated our wedding anniversary, a place far too extravagant for a company-funded trip. A throbbing headache began to surface, fueled by the realization of Brian's sloppy alibi. Mother-in-law, this is difficult to say, but Brian might be cheating, I confessed. What? Brian? Her disbelief echoed in the room. But this does seem suspicious, she conceded, her expression shifting. Isn't this the hotel? Hold on, let's confirm if he's really there, she suggested, disappearing for a moment. After what felt like an eternity, she returned, a smirk playing on her lips. They said they'll check it out for me first. We need to verify the facts, she announced. As we waited, about 10 anxious minutes passed by. When I received a call from my mother-in-law, the news was shocking. Brian, my husband, seemed to be spending the night at that hotel, and with another woman, no less. Despite the strict policies against such actions, the circumstances seemed to warrant an exception, my mother-in-law explained. She even disclosed the name of the woman Brian was with. I was taken aback when I heard the name. I knew her. She was actually a friend of mine. My coworker and friend Jessica, who worked in the same department as Brian. She had even been present at our wedding, delivering a speech. The revelation left my mother-in-law equally astonished. Furious, her face flushed bright red, my mother-in-law was ready to confront Brian then and there. However, I urged caution, suggesting we gather solid evidence first. We decided to hire a private detective. After that, I'm filing for divorce. I can't tolerate a man who cheats with my friend. I plan to seek alimony, so I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause you, mother-in-law, I explained. Don't worry about it. I'll give that idiot son of mine a piece of my mind. How dare he betray such a good wife? When he comes back, he'll get a thrashing, my mother-in-law declared angrily, her words offering me some solace. Feeling somewhat uplifted by her support, I began searching for a private detective. A relative of my mother-in-law recommended a reputable detective agency, and I promptly hired them. When I received the report, I couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that my friend Jessica had been posing as Brian's wife while they were away on location, 3 days before my scheduled discharge from the hospital. I dialed Brian's number, keeping it a secret that my mother-in-law was aware of the situation. How are you feeling? I inquired. I'm sorry, I've been too busy to visit. I'll definitely pick you up on your discharge day. Do you need anything? He responded. No, I'm fine. Sorry for bothering you while you're so busy. Apparently, my recovery is taking longer, so my discharge date has been extended. I'm just calling to let you know. I'm borrowing things like pajamas from the hospital, so no need to worry. Looks like I'll be discharged a week from now, I explained. Sorry for not being able to support you while you're so busy. Oh, could you withdraw money for the hospital bills? I don't have any cash on hand, so could you do it on my discharge day? I requested. I see, that sounds tough. Alright, I should be done with my delivery in a week, so I'll go to the bank before picking you up. My mom's been worried too. She's caught a cold and feels bad for not being able to visit you. Brian lied effortlessly. Suppressing a laugh at his fabrications, I replied, Oh, is that so? Please tell mother-in-law to take care. Did you manage to inform the office? Thank you. Did they say anything about allowances? He asked, trying to keep the conversation casual. They did. I'll take care of the procedures. You just rest and recover. Hope you get well soon. All right, thank you. See you in a week then, I replied, ending the call. Already aware of Brian's deception, I had confirmed with the office before his call. Apparently, he had informed them that he was going on a trip and applied for my leave. As a result, my boss inquired about the trip and my well-being. After explaining my situation, my boss decided to visit the hospital immediately. Not only my boss but also the HR department came, revealing that I was entitled to sick leave benefits. It was then revealed that Brian had been out of touch for about a week, and he was also behind on his deadlines. The same was true for his mistress, who they couldn't reach either. This revelation shed light on a situation that had been ongoing for the past 6 months, finally coming to a head, prompting them to come and talk to me. I informed my bosses that I preferred they didn't mention the situation to Brian or his mistress until a week later. After that, they were free to impose any necessary punishment. Following the plan, I was discharged from the hospital. It appeared that Brian had submitted another application for my paid leave. His mother, my mother-in-law, received a call from him, stating that his business trip was extended. Despite my extended hospital stay due to my illness, he was prolonging his vacation with his mistress. It became evident that there was no love left for me, leaving me feeling saddened. Deciding to take my paid leave as initially planned, my boss assured me to take all the time I needed until Brian returned. My mother-in-law and I prepared ourselves to confront him. The day before I intended to inform Brian about my discharge from the hospital, I called him. "Hello, how's your mother doing?" I inquired. "I'm feeling good and I got discharged today. It was sudden, so don't worry about picking me up. I can pay with my credit card," he replied. "You're working today, right, Brian?" I pressed. "Yeah, I have a meeting soon and another one tonight, so I won't be home until late. Sorry," he said. "That's fine, don't worry about it. I'll take a taxi home," I assured him. Suppressing a laugh at the background noise of a shopping center announcement during his call, I calmly hung up the phone and activated the voice recorder. I had received word from the detective that Brian planned to go shopping today, so I deliberately called him during that time. Upon checking the voice recorder, Brian's voice and the background announcement were distinctly captured. Apparently, Brian had contacted my mother-in-law, claiming he was on vacation with a friend. He insisted it was a working vacation, a sort of half-truth, and mentioned I had given my approval, omitting the details of my hospitalizations to spare her worry. Brian's absurd excuses left me chuckling. According to the detective, Brian had boarded a late-night flight back. My mother-in-law and I laid out all the evidence, awaiting Brian's return. However, Brian called me with a different story. "Sorry, the meeting ran late and I missed the last train. I'll be back on the first train tomorrow," he said. "Is that so? That's tough." "Got it. Sorry, I can't pick you up," I replied calmly before ending the call. After indulging in a 3-week affair trip, it seemed Brian still couldn't get enough. My mother-in-law was furious, but I found that my love for Brian had vanished entirely, allowing me to maintain composure during our discussion. The next day, Brian returned home looking exhausted, laden with souvenirs. "You went on a trip," I stated flatly. "I didn't hear about that," I said, puzzled. "Ha, didn't I tell you?" "Sorry, my bad. I got friendly with a client, and they invited me." "Business relationships matter, right?" Brian explained casually as he handed me a bag and followed me to the living room. "I'm home. Hey, what's up with you, Mom? You look scary," Brian said, grinning as he plopped down onto a chair. He seemed to believe his mother was on his side. However, as soon as he saw the documents laid out on the table, his face drained of color. Sitting next to my mother-in-law, I pointed at a photo. "Oh yes, you seem to have had quite the fun on your trip with Jessica, leaving your injured wife for 3 weeks. Were you in a honeymoon mood?" I asked pointedly. "What? What's this, Carol? Stop fooling around," Brian stammered, his face contorting in disbelief. Unfortunately, it wasn't a joke. I presented evidence from a private detective. "You were pretty careless, weren't you? Your dinner conversations were totally bugged. Staying at a hotel run by our relatives, you must have thought you wouldn't get caught." Brian's face turned even more shocked as he looked at his mother for help. "Mom, it was a lapse in judgment," he tried to explain. "A lapse in judgment that lasted 3 weeks seems a bit too long, don't you think?" His mother interjected with a cheerful smile. Brian, who had been hoping for help, was stunned. "Here, these are documents for a claim for damages and a divorce application. Fill it out now," I instructed firmly. "Damages? Divorce? Carol, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. The one I truly love is you. Can't you forgive me? Let's start over," Brian pleaded. In response, I pressed a button on my phone, and the voices of Brian and Jessica flowed out. It was a conversation recorded by the detective, hinting at a divorce with me and a remarriage with Jessica. Brian's face turned even paler. "It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I didn't mean it," Brian mumbled, looking desperate. I couldn't care less, really," I replied, handing him the documents and urging him to write. "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any damages." "Well, that's what happens when you splurge like that. Where did all that money come from anyway?" I asked pointedly. Brian mumbled something incoherent, and I had a bad feeling about it. You didn't by chance use the living expenses, did you? I have been giving you money to pass on to mother-in-law. Did you? You've been passing it on to her, right? I asked Brian, expecting confirmation. However, the response I got wasn't from Brian, but from mother-in-law herself. Living expenses? What are you talking about? I've never received anything like that, she said, seeming genuinely unaware. Confused, I turned to Brian. Hey, what's going on here? Explain it properly, I demanded. Mother-in-law, and I confronted Brian, who seemed to shrink under our scrutiny. I'm sorry, the living expenses, I use them for our dates, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I felt my already icy affection for Brian grow even colder. He had spent the almost $2,000 I had been giving him every month. All of it. I told you that money was for groceries, utilities, and to thank mother-in-law. That money was mine in the first place, I reminded him, my voice tinged with disappointment. I'm sorry, my salary alone wasn't enough, Brian offered weakly, but it was clear what wasn't enough. The designer items Jessica had. Surely, there must have been gifts from Brian. I swiftly raised my hand to reprimand him, but it was stopped by mother-in-law. Brian watched hopefully, still thinking mother-in-law was on his side. You can't, Carol. If you lay a hand, it'll be to your disadvantage, mother-in-law warned before turning to face Brian. Then, with calm and monotone demeanor, mother-in-law delivered her verdict. I've always thought the sillier the child, the cuter. I've spoiled you too much. Even with the bias, you grew up kind, and your father and I were so happy when you got such a good wife. But now, I'm cutting ties with you. Brian, stunned, tried to protest, but Mom, you're joking, right? Mother-in-law slapped away Brian's pleading hand and handed him a document containing a clause renouncing inheritance. Brian widened his eyes in disbelief, muttering, I can't believe it. It doesn't matter if you can't believe it. It's all true, mother-in-law stated firmly. Dejected and seemingly out of arguments, Brian signed all the documents presented. Afterwards, mother-in-law kicked Brian out. He had apparently been misusing company entertainment expenses and was claimed for reimbursement by the company. Brian ended up living in an apartment without a bath, forced into a poor lifestyle after paying alimony and facing reimbursement claims. I claimed alimony from his mistress, Jessica, who, as it turned out, was married. Her husband was away on business, so I contacted him through social media and claimed alimony. As a result, Jessica avoided divorce but had to quit her job, forced to live with her husband's family in a rural area without internet connection, where she was made to work from dawn till dusk. Having lost my parents early, I ended up being adopted by mother-in-law. Initially reluctant because of Brian's infidelity, mother-in-law eventually accepted, and we sold the house, buying a new one just for the two of us. I want to take good care of